Well, here we are once again. Look at that. See my shadow? We have been mapping things out because I believe we are done with book 2. I think. I don't fucking know. I don't goddamn know anymore sometimes. It's a whole motherfucking thing. But for the most part, the story is complete except for the end. The end that should happen, but we don't know exactly how the end will happen. Right, Mama? Doesn't give a shit, as usual, like everyone in my fucking life. What's up? Welcome, my friends. Welcome back. How are we doing? We doing good or we doing gay? We doing gay or we doing gray? We have begun the process of, I don't even know what it's called, but the typing ceased, if you want to say that. I don't even remember. There's like maybe a page done last Wednesday, but I ended up doing handwriting. I think I hand wrote like 3 or 4 pages. Sometimes you got to kind of do that to really feel the scene, because handwriting gets you so close. But as you can see, I hand wrote a few pages, small as I possibly could, to get the gist of the story. Now, for me, the handwriting does kind of let me slow down so I can channel this stuff better. If anything, it's the best way to write. But you know, we chose to do this on a typewriter, so. But as I was doing all the handwriting, I really established the ending climactic part of the book, and man, I feel like it's really cool. Just in its like form right now, its raw form, it is really fucking cool, and I'm excited to see where that will lead us. But I did not write the last scene, the big battle scene, if you want to call it that, or whatever, you know, like the climax part, and then it's up here, and it's like, oh my god, this is insane, and then the book has to come to an end and a cliffhanger, in a sense. Well, I didn't really do that. I only gave myself some notes, because I want to really take my time with that one. So, for me, the book for Eoras is done. Now, the book for Nakiim, like Nakiim's journey, is not done. So once we kind of dig through this stuff a little bit today, we're gonna just make sure we plot it and we take notes. That's what I've been doing. I've just been taking notes and stuff. I've got my little things here to mark them where they are and how to remember where to find them, and we're just going through that whole process, and then eventually we'll jump over to Nakiim, finish his story. From that point, there's only 2 more that I have to work on, and I've talked about before. It's Aya, which is the big one, and then I have it's just kind of like this this being that oversees life and all these things, and he's kind of like I guess think of him like a Gandalf. I just got to give him some scenes in the beginning to really establish to the reader the bigger story behind everything that's going to be happening in book 2. So once I finish those 2 things, first draft of book 2 is complete. Now, the biggest thing that I'll end up doing, once, let's pretend those are finished now, is we're going to be gathering information, right? We finished the story. It's in our head. We can kind of remember foggy glimpses of it. And it'll probably do some rereading. But from the rereading, we have to start getting motivations of people. So I'll do like documents of like, okay, let's just write down the motivation of the main antagonist. And so I'll just sit down and think, what are the motivations of the main antagonist? And why are they doing what they're doing? And what's their backstory? And what's this? What's that? I'll do this for every character that matters. Just kind of get a gist of who they are, because in that rewrite, I'm going to need to channel that, like their ambitions and stuff. And you never know where that could lead from the original story concept. If your character meets the king in the grand throne room, and the king, because you're a stream of consciousness, is kind of quietly listening to him and saying, okay, you may leave now. Well, maybe now in that rewrite, because you've gotten the motivation of the king, you can actually explore his character more. Maybe he was distrustful. Maybe he's asking probing questions. Maybe he's trying to exert, I guess you could say, his authority. Shit like that. Or, like, some characters may be more of a Han Solo type, and so if you wrote him in stream of consciousness and you didn't really focus on that like I did, you got to kind of go back and plant that whole, like, I can't get caught up in this shit. I got my own problems. You have to start laying that out so so the reader can see the character's, development, if you will. So the big stuff, like I said, will be this. One thing that I really want to do better at in this time around, which I'll probably end up going back in book 1 and really making sure I did it well, since I've honed my skills a little bit more, is I want to convey to the reader the environments. Because for me, it's so hard to focus on the environments, just because like how my natural mode is. And my natural mode is definitely like, fuck all that shit, let's focus on the task at hand. Don't get distracted. And so it's really hard for me to get distracted by like, oh, look at the mountains in the distance there. It's beautiful. So, you know what I mean? Like, so I didn't write like that. I stayed razor focused on the story and what was going on because it needed to get solved. But now, looking back, I do want to take moments, and I'll find them, where I can really explore the world a bit to let the reader sink in and fall in love with it. Because it's a very cerebral, character-focused, growth-focused story. Super focused on that. Like, you almost forget there's a world going on around, is kind of the sense of it. Now, in some aspects, it's very, I don't know how to explain it. I would say it's very intended, being that I want it to feel like maybe this story isn't necessarily happening where you think it is. I love the idea that this world exists only within a mind. So the fogginess is essentially, it lends to that concept where it's like, huh, yeah, this is kind of like a dream. It's hard to keep straight what's going on around them, There's a lot of aspects like that. Obviously, it just enhances it. I mean, what you're doing is you're taking that base raw version of the book right here, and you're just refining it, and you're fixing all the plot holes. You're making the dialogues flow. You're giving the characters a chance to breathe. The world and the plot and the intrigue, and then now you start focusing on the pacing of the story, and you start working on, whatever it is. Like, you lay some information down, and it's a little tense. Like, well, what's going to happen next? And you do that right. If there's a scene where it's really chaotic, well, you have to kind of write chaotically in that sense to convey it. That's what we're going to be working on now. And also at the same time, while we're reading, we might be like, yeah, I don't think that works. That just kind of fell apart. And there may be multiple rewrites. Certain aspects, certain chapters, certain segments. A whole character might be eliminated. I don't know. You never know what's going to come from all this. But where we are now, it's definitely, it's going to be a hell of a lot of work. I mean, this is just the beginning. So what I did with this, I copied it from my phone. And in my phone, I have the notes section. And every time I'm thinking about the book, I'll just I'll take notes. I'll just type in, like, maybe we should try this, or this is going on, or maybe this character is doing that, or whatever. And I just do it throughout. Every time I'm at a section of the book, I'll write it. So it's beginning to end in a sense. From that point, I'll just take it and copy it over to the computer, read it, and then take subsequent notes from those notes. And okay, if I said this in here, then let me really go through it, talk about the prophecy here. And that might lead to me doing, like this one, even bigger notes. Legal pads. Just to explore every possible avenue that we can with everything in the story. Because for me, Everything in the book matters. There is no throw away anything. And I have to remember that. Because there might be times where I'll mention something in the stream of consciousness, but I'll forget about it. Or I won't take seriously that, and I might drop the ball in that section. Like, you mentioned this character like 30 pages ago, but he's not ever been everything since. He's nothing. And I'll be like, oh yeah, because I forgot. Shit like that. Now, it's really hard to say how we're gonna end up doing this, and I still have no clue how long this is gonna take us. This might be a motherfucking journey that takes a year still, or I could finish this up in another 40 something days. Yeah, I don't know. I do not know. It's just going to be quite tough. My God, man. I just think about it, it's just like, fucking hell. Fucking hell. What are we doing? Still, I find myself quite surprised at all this. I know I say that just about every other video. I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I'm doing this. But it feels that way. It really does. It feels like, man, I can't believe that I'm here. It's so crazy. I can't believe that I'm doing any of this. It's so different than who I was. And I really cannot express just how much that means to me and how much that what kind of different we're talking about, because for the longest time I've always been a searcher. I've always kind of looked deeply at stuff, and I had a really hard time taking just about anything at face value. When I was young, I didn't really have words for it. I didn't have structure for it. It was just my natural mode. But I didn't dwell on it too much. It was just, I don't know. Every once in a while, someone might tell me I think too much. But I didn't really know what that meant. And I felt bad about that. And I didn't have confidence in myself. So I took it harder. It was more painful to feel like that. Or I never really could understand the world. And it would end up just making me feel like an alien. We've talked about this quite a bit in every video. But as I've gotten older and through this book, have I slowly learned who I am. I don't know if I could tell you to this day, who are you? But I feel as if we're slowly starting to understand what kind of person we are. And one of the main things with me is I cannot take anything at face value. I cannot. There's no way I could do that. There's just no way. There's something behind anything. Always is there something behind every little thing. Nothing just happens. I don't believe in fully. I don't believe in chance. I believe that aspect can have elements in life and society, but I don't necessarily believe in chance as just one concept. Free will, I do believe in that in a grand sense, just because of just because of the stuff I explored, the aspects in which I kind of explored through free will and being in the life that I've had. I know that that's not a concept people believe, especially within the scientific community, but they don't believe anything, seems like. But as I look more at the way I work on the books, or the way I have to write the books, or some shit along those lines, it always ends up being just like, well, what's the motivation? What's really going on there? Why exactly do they want to do this? What exactly does that look like? And how does it function in society? And what really happened to the gods? No, they just disappeared. Well, how and why, and you know, and then you work on it for hours. You're like, yeah, but like, how exactly? What exact magical power banished them, and how does that power work? Like, that's all I've ever done. Is just like, I can't, like, I just accept something. Like, yeah, this is what it is. I'm like, yeah, but how and why and where and what? It's just who I've always been, apparently. And as I become a grown adult, and now I'm in my early 30s, I've accepted that fact of like, yeah, you're never going to feel that face value of anything. You know, you present me with a new topic, a new subject, a new anything. I'm half kind of like, I don't know, arms crossed. And then the other half is just like, I must believe everything that comes from this. And then those two things battle each other every fucking time. You know, if you show me a conspiracy theory, let's pretend, you know, I'm always like half. That's fucking makes perfect sense. And I'll believe it. And the other half of me is like, I don't know, like, but you need to process this before you start doing that, you know. And then there's that battle that happens in my head. And so from that point, it's like, how do you dive into whatever this topic is? And, you know, gather all the books that I can about it, and let's fucking figure this out. It really has been quite a journey to discover that's the person that we are. And accepting that. Because that's the hard part, right? You can identify it, but how do you accept it? Because one of the main, it's not really a big problem for me, but because I have a job where I'm amongst people that are not necessarily, they just don't go these places in their head, like, they're not very deep people, right? It's a small town, it's a job in a grocery store. You can't expect a lot of thinkers to be there. You know, most you'll get is talking about college sports or things that are on Facebook, you know, just people like that. So I'm not really around folk like me. And it's still made me feel isolated, but also because I kind of have this kind of attitude like nothing really matters in this job or in anything in society, like it's all pointless. It's really made people judge me in a weird way at work. Not, they won't ever say anything to me, of course, but what I've heard people talk about me when I'm not around. It's interesting. It really is very interesting, like, because you're trying to separate yourself from it, the way that they act. You know, it very is much like the sheep trying to kick the black sheep out. And I don't necessarily think of myself as a black sheep. But my point is, these groups of people will definitely try their best to make sure that you stay within their concept. And the less they know about you, the more they like to fill up in their cups of thoughts. You know, things that are what they want you to be based on what they, you know, their negative aspects of other people are, right? This is how that always is. If I don't understand you because you're a quiet person, well, everything I think that you are because of what I don't like in the world, you encompass that. You are that. That's why they always joke about quiet people being like the ones that do the mass shootings and all that, or whatever the fuck the jokes were. Like, so that's kind of made it difficult for me to function because I'm not around people like myself, ever. It's very rare. So in some sense, I close myself off and just go into full, you know, self mode, if you want to call it that. And that's what these books are. That's it to me. They're everything. It's been kind of like a journey in that sense of trying to figure out myself and everything around me and who I am and what I am and all this junk. And it's like, at one aspect, it's bringing about a peace within self, but on the other side, it's definitely, it's isolating me in my mind, and I'm closing myself off. And in some sense, the fact that these videos are out and there may be some people that watch them, there's a positivity to that. There's a, okay, like, if some people are watching, then that means there are some people out there that either A, feel the same, or some sort of kindred spirit mentality, or be at least entertained by it. I don't know. You know, that gives me some sense of hope. It's like, okay, like continue to go, man, because there are some people that might feel this way too, and it's been one of my big important things of showing every time, in being 100% honest, so you can see it's not this. I'm not trying to, like, I'm not making an image here. I'm not trying to, like, I don't know. Nothing's phony. It's always just me being real. So if I'm having a hard day, I'm not gonna like, well, I won't record it. Like, no, I'll show it, so you can see, and then we can show how to get out of it if I think of it. You can get quite lost in all of this, is the negative side. But the positive side is you can totally find that person that looks back at you in the mirror that you don't know exactly how to feel about. Because, man, it's been a fucking trip just walking down this road sometimes. That self-expression is so crucial. It's just, in this modern era, we get caught up on views. You know, how many views do you have? How many people are looking at your art? How many, you're not famous. You're not like Picasso. Like, everyone wants to shoot for this fucking person that's been immortalized through their pain. It's like, don't shoot for that, man. Like, shoot for what you're trying to accomplish. That's the most important thing. Like, substance, not a tier. Like, yeah, once I hit that fucking tier, it's such a modern thing. We don't need to be fucking with that. Like, focus on what it is, and if it's good to someone else, then people will enjoy it. A lot of the people that are artists in the world probably are very unknown, and always will be, and that's just how that is. You might make some art, and then hundreds of years later, finally people appreciate it. Like, oh my god, this is genius, because a certain mindset has to happen. And if you're doing something that's totally of self, well, it's hard for people to hook onto that, because they're not looking for yourself. They're looking for themselves, or whatever was created in society around them. Well, when you're doing something that doesn't fucking exist, like, I remind myself, I'm making a book that no one's ever heard of. I'm sure most of the people that watch this have no clue what it's about. Of course it's not going to have a lot of fucking views. No one's reading it. No one even knows about it. They're not even thinking, like, well, I should look for that one guy that's making that book that's in that small town that no one's ever heard of. Like, no, you have no idea. So to you, you're not going to find it until someone says something about it. So once you accept that, just work on the art and let it speak for itself, and then trust in it, and trust in the people around you, and trust who enters your life. Trust that God got your back in that sense, and just continue to go forward. I mean, that's the only thing I can think to do, or advice to say, because who knows? I might do all this work and one person will say, like, oh, it's bigoted or something. I don't know. Some fucking modern thing. Like, oh, it's not multicultural. There's no transgenders in it. Shut her down. And they try to eliminate it. And it goes into hiding for a long time. Then eventually some people read it when they realize that society was fucked to begin with. And then they restart. But I've been dead for 300 years. I don't know. You never know. It's crazy like that. So for me, my favorite part is leaving the breadcrumbs in these videos, because you don't know where the art may go. We should probably get going and just work on the notes and all that shit, and then see where we can go from there.